We're joined now by the Conservative MP and Chair of the Women and Equalities Committee, Caroline Nokes. Lovely to have you on the programme.
Hello.
There's so much that we could talk about, but it feels like we should start with the conference that was on this week, the international conference, full of lots of really inspirational speakers about violence against women and girls in conflict. There's been a lot of talk about wartime rape in particular. How much of an issue is it, and do you think things are getting better?
Oh, no, I don't think things are getting better, and I really wish they were. I think the steps that we've seen from 50 countries coming together at the beginning of this week, with the UK leading the way on the declaration, I think that's progress. But what we really need to see is a cultural approach where we would all recognise that rape, sexual assault, violence against women and girls as part of conflict is absolutely abhorrent. What we also need to make sure is that Russian soldiers, for example, in Ukraine are respecting that, but across the whole globe. And I think back to when William Hague was Foreign Secretary and really was leading the way on discussing rape as a weapon of war. And it just feels like globally we've made too little progress. So I really welcome the money that's going to go in. We've seen, I think, £12.5 million committed by the UK government, $10 million from the US. But we need to have a cultural approach to supporting survivors, justice measures, making sure that evidence is collected both effectively and ethically. And I've seen all that in the declaration this week, but I think we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah, Angelina Jolie described this week the lack of action by governments to support survivors as deeply painful and frustrating. I mean, we would all agree with these assessments, but I guess just listening to you talking about, the actions of individual Russian soldiers, for example, it's so difficult, isn't it, to do anything about what is effectively the actions of individuals?
Well, there are some very serious allegations about whether in Ukraine rape is being used as a systematic weapon of war. So actually I think there has to be, the collection of evidence. They have to be brought to trial. We need to see international criminal courts convened to deal with that. But Russia's turning itself into a real pariah state, from which you have to question whether there's any route back.
And what do you think that means in reality?
Well, I think in reality it means yet more, probably decades of sanctions. It means more action by the West against Russia. I think inevitably we need to be making sure that Ukraine has the resources it needs. We've done some great work over the last 10 months trying to support Ukraine, making sure that troops have the training that they need. But it's just such a horrendous situation.
There's so much that I want to talk to you about, including what your committee is looking into. But there's been a lot of debate recently about the online harms bill, which is all about safety online, effectively, and something that women and girls feel very strongly about. It can feel like a place where there's an awful lot of misogyny, if you take misogyny to mean hatred of women. Do you think that there is a risk the online harms bill has been watered down, or are you more in the camp that says, look, there is a balance to be struck between harm online and freedom of speech?
Well, look, I want an online harms legislation that's going to be effective. I want to see something that is going to protect children. That's an absolute must, as far as I'm concerned. And I think there are some good measures in it around coercive control, making that a priority offence, around sharing of intimate images, deep fakes. I've been really pleased, cyber flashing, been really pleased to see the engagement that Michelle Donnellan's had on that. But I think with legislation like this, we all want a bit more, don't we? And there is, I think the more important balance to be struck is between making sure that the regulator is effective, making sure that there are enforcement powers that are actually going to put the onus on the social media giants to make sure that children are off their platform. And I think it's really difficult. I think we have to be realistic about this.
Yeah.
That as soon as we legislate, there will be some geek somewhere in the world will be looking for routes around whatever legislation is put in place.
You've also been looking at sexism in football in your committee. It feels something that we should be talking about right now with the World Cup. What have you been looking at?
Oh, look, we had some really startling evidence, I think it was a fortnight ago, from Fern Whelan and Susie Rack, who is a very prominent sports journalist, talking about the blatant misogyny that they'd faced, the contrast between comments that they would make when reporting on matches, and a male commentator would make exactly the same comment and get no abuse. I think Susie Rack gave us a beautiful demonstration of some of the abuse that she's faced. And some of those typical sexist tropes of get back to the kitchen, love, but actually far more insidious, vile threats and commentary against them. And I think we've got some brilliant examples, haven't we? The England women's team winning the Euros,
well.
Jill Scott winning I'm a Celebrity. And these are women who are real trailblazers and have set the standard. And I think one of the really fascinating things was the cultural differences between the man's game and the women's game. I went to the quarter-final where England beat Spain, and there was a fantastic family atmosphere. Contrast that with Fern Whelan saying to us that until facilities and attitudes improve, she doesn't take her son to football matches anymore. That
is quite depressing, actually, isn't it? I mean, some people listening, will have heard the very, very serious stuff that we spoke about at the beginning. Then they'll be listening to, us talk about women in football. They'll be like, look, does it really matter? Is it a big deal? Is it a big deal? Yeah, it is a big deal because it's about the culture. It's about misogyny. It's about the way women should be respected and, to be quite frank, aren't. And it's about some of the issues that we've been talking about on the committee over the last couple of years, which are very much around the pyramid of offending, the cultural norms, and I hate to say that, the cultural norms that make it OK to abuse women online, and at what point does your online predator turn into a predator in real life? And I think the committee's working with some experts to understand that pyramid of offending and to understand the crossover between the virtual world and the real world. And it's all part of how can we do better? How can we make sure that we address the root causes of male violence against women? Just finally, I'm interested to get your view quickly on how Rishi Sunak's getting on. One Conservative MP I spoke to recently said that you had a 0% chance of winning the next election. Now he put it at 1 in 5. Do you share that analysis? No, I think it's a lot better than that. I'm really pleased that we have Rishi as Prime Minister. I supported him back in the summer, and I think that he's doing OK. It's a long way to go to the next general election. I think I want to see us come up with some offers, particularly for female voters. I want to see us get the economy back on track. I think that's really important. What kind of things for female voters? OK, so I think, and Rishi spoke about this in the summer, we've got to make women feel safe, and we've just been talking about that. I also want to see more action around the women's health strategy, to see some real effort put into that. So some of the and I hesitate to say some of the forgotten conditions, the massive waits that we have in gynaecology at the moment. And I want to make sure that we come up with some good work around childcare. Look, we know that the pandemic clobbered the economic well-being of women, and I would love to see us prioritise how we are focusing on getting women into better jobs. I think I'm right in saying that women are more likely to vote for Labour than men, right? They are at the moment. We have to change that. Yeah. OK, thank you very much indeed. Caroline Nokes there.